Would you believe me if I said that there existed a Doors entity which doesn't actually appear in the game? I know it sounds kind of weird, but just hear me out on this. Essentially, around a year ago, a brand new Doors entity was created, and despite it appearing in official media, it was never actually added to the game. That is, until now, where it was sort of added in the Floor 2 update, and I'll explain what I mean by sort of in a little bit. So, with that little sneak peek of what's to come out of the way, in this video I'll be explaining the story of Hole, the forgotten Doors entity who somehow managed to make a comeback in Floor 2. And what's surprising is many of you don't even know about their presence in the mines. Let's begin. Alright, so who exactly is Hole? Well, based on these images you can get a clear picture. Hole visually appears to be a black mass which comes out of a hole, hence their name. They have two claw-like hands as well as glowing, crying eyes. Now, if you played through the entire game of Doors, you'd probably notice that this entity doesn't appear anywhere, and this is for a good reason. You see, Hole, despite being a Doors entity, doesn't actually appear in Doors, and that is because they are exclusive to the Tower Heroes event. Essentially, around a year ago, Doors and Tower Heroes did a collaboration event. For this event, much of the new content was introduced in the Tower Heroes game, with Doors only receiving a few new paintings. Now, for those who don't know, Tower Heroes is a tower defense game, meaning players must defend against waves of enemies using different towers, which act as the offense and defense. In this collaboration event, a bunch of new Doors-themed entities were added as enemies in Tower Heroes, and although most of them were from the actual Doors game, an entirely new entity was added too, that being Hole. Now, if I recall correctly, the only reason Hole was added to this event was because they ran out of actual Doors entities to make into enemies, so they created a new one. Additionally, in Tower Heroes, Hole only appears in the Doors-themed sections of the game, and given how they were specifically created for the Doors event, it is pretty safe to say they are a somewhat official Doors entity, which surprisingly doesn't actually appear in the Doors game. However, it seems that this entity will forever have this title, as it appears to have been confirmed that they will never be added to the actual Doors game. But, on the contrary, this whole collaboration event and the message stating how Hole would never be added to the official Doors game were made over a year ago, and things can change in a year. Fortunately, though, it appears that the fate of Hole was reconsidered, and they were actually added in the Floor 2 update. Kind of. You see, although Hole themselves wasn't added to the mines, an entity heavily inspired by them was added. And what's crazy is that nobody even noticed this connection until the developers themselves pointed it out. Essentially, in the Room 200 boss fight, in addition to having to fight Damn Seek, we must also avoid the Seek minions. One of these minions, named Seek Sludge by the community, has a design which is actually inspired by Hole. As you can see, both entities have a similar body shape, and they even share the same claw design. There's also how the developers directly confirmed how Seek Sludge was directly inspired by Hole. Now, I'll say that I don't think anybody in the community noticed how Hole was added to the actual Doors game in the form of Seek Sludge, probably because only the top half of the entity is visible in-game, but it's still a really cool Easter egg. Now, as for what Hole, aka Seek Sludge, does, as I stated, they are a Seek minion in the Room 200 boss fight, and they are pretty easy to deal with. Seek Sludge will attempt to grab onto the platform you are standing on with their claws, and to avoid their attack you must simply move to a different platform. I can say that I wasn't expecting Hole to return in Floor 2, much less for them to appear as a variation of Seek, but it is still awesome to see this entity finally get the recognition it deserves. Anyways, that was the entire story of Hole, the Doors entity who was never actually added to Doors, kind of. Let me know in the comments what you think of this entity, and with all of that being said, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.